What is happiness?
Well, happiness to me means relaxed enjoyment. I'm relaxed when I don't feel there's a threat to me in some way, bodily or emotionally or intellectually or spiritually. Just relaxed. And enjoyment means that I can tune in to the here and now and enjoy what's going on. I might be walking around, and that's relaxed enjoyment. No threat, and just noticing the flowers or the trees or whatever I can see.
And obviously that's a state of mind that everybody wants.
Yes, and it's the remarkable thing that animals in the wild live in this state of relaxed enjoyment, I guess 99% of the time. Every now and then they're threatened. There's a lion trying to find some dinner, and there's a cute little zebra out there, and so it'll try to get it for dinner. Now obviously that's not going to be very relaxing for the zebra, so it'll leave the relaxed enjoyment and do what it needs to do to run away to protect itself. But then it very rapidly gets back to relaxed enjoyment. Things happen so fast in the animal world. Either the zebra gets eaten up or he escapes, and it'll happen probably within a few minutes, you see. So most of their lives, I think 99%, will be spent in something that I feel we could call relaxed enjoyment. Now, the poignant part of this is how do we humans stack up? And it's really shocking. I think we spend 99% of our lives not having relaxed enjoyment. We're armored, we perceive threats, and of course animals don't have a rational mind that can project in the future and worry about the past. They're always right here now. And so we have this state where we deserve and should have relaxed enjoyment, well, let's say 99% of our life, like your dog or your cat or any of the mammals.
So why is that so difficult for humans to achieve?
It's because of the great multiplicity of the games that we set up to play. And these games have a win-loss position. And most of us are trained by our parents to be based on fear and guilt and shame. In other words, our parents try to control us through making us feel fear, guilt, or shame, or threatening us with things that will make us feel fear, guilt, and shame. So there's a need for a human being to be continually armored and protected. And even if things seem very peaceful and safe and you're enjoying what's happening right now, still your mind can project in, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow and next day and next year. And so we're not living in the now, but we're using our mind literally to drive ourselves crazy, I think.
In one of your books, you talk about the secrets of happiness.
Yeah.
And I recall Thoreau writing, the massive men lead lives of quiet desperation.
That's it, quiet desperation. And sometimes not so quiet.
And you also write that we only really experience flashes or moments of happiness.
Yeah.
And is this because we're constantly thinking about the future and thinking about the past and not living in the now?
Yes, it's because we have so many, what I like to call addictive models. An addiction is something that I have to let myself feel happy. in relaxed enjoyment. And there's so many models that we humans can have that animals don't get into, generally speaking. They can be trained to be just as neurotic as human beings, you know. All you need to do is give a dog a big whack every time it goes for a bowl of food, or whenever you see it, throw a rock at it, and pretty soon it will be not living in 99% relaxed enjoyment. It'll have to feel safe by very carefully figuring out, are you there? And can I run over and grab a bite of food and run back before the rock hits me, or whatever. There's been a lot of experiments in making dogs and cats neurotic, and it's possible to get them to be quite neurotic.
So this is a learned behavior, even in humans. In other words, we learn to be not happy? Would that be an accurate way?
The cultural, social conditions under which we live with increasing complexities in life. In other words, we're a long way from the primitive people living in caves out in a natural setting. Their lives are much simpler than ours. They don't worry about mortgage payments. They just keep hunting till they find a cave that they can build a fire in and feel protected in. And we could just amplify that with, we're dealing with mortgage payments, and we're dealing with, does she love me or does she not love me? Or what can I do about my children? Are they growing up to fit my models? And business, am I getting promoted? Should I have more wages? And it goes on and on. It's like, you know, I could look around this room right now and I'm sure find some fault with it. Gee, those glasses and empty can of apple juice, why don't they get rid of stuff like that rather than, you know, there's no end to how much the human mind can make itself restless and threatened. And so we just are creating for ourselves a great deal of turmoil. Now, it's not the glasses or the empty can that really causes that. It's the way we look at it from a fear, guilt, and shame base.
And is this something that we learn as children? And
Parents teach us that, our caretakers. It's unfortunate that the common style of parenting today is to create a terrified, shame-based, guilty feeling, fearful adult or child that'll grow into an adult. It won't change these habits unless therapy or some type of intervention occurs.
And so then that pattern is repetitive because we've learned that behavior,
Right.
and then we transfer it to our children.
Right. Let me just give you an example, because we don't realize how we are training shame-based children. I know I did it. I wish I could go back and relive those years with what I know now. But the type of parenting I had, let's say I'm in a supermarket with my mother, and she's gathering some food off of this shelf and that shelf, and her model is that I stay real close to her and not touch anything on the shelves. And she'll tell me that, don't touch anything, come on now. But as a little kid, I would be curious, what's all these shelves about? What's all these cans about? It's my job at age 3 to explore the world. What kind of world do we live in? What part in it can I play? So I can't see why she wants me to be right with her all the time. Doesn't make much sense to me. I'm right here and I'm right now. So I'll be reaching out, and then she could easily, and I'm not trying to be hard on our mothers, they were just passing on the habits they got from their parents who got it from their parents. But what's happening is that due to lack of parental understanding and skill today, let's say my mother, way back then, might have said to me, Ken, I told you 1,000 times, don't touch anything on the shelves. Now stay real close to me. Here, give me your hand. Now, you just look at what happened. There was fear. It's like, Mommy's mad. I can tell from her tone. She's mad at me. I'm not safe when she's mad, because she has all the power to do anything. She can spank me when we get home. She can say, well, I'll never take you again, or whatever type of punishment she might want to do. But just the fact that she's mad now creates fear in me. And then I'll feel guilty because she pointed out she told me 1,000 times not to do that. I don't know what 1,000 times is, but it sounds pretty bad to my little 4-year-old mind. So I'm beginning to feel very guilty. And then I'm ashamed of not meeting her models. And so just by that usual conversation, and I'm sure you've been to supermarkets, and there'd be a mother and a young child, and what I just enacted as a hypothetical scenario with my mother back then, you've probably seen much more abusive language and screaming at the little kid, and it terrifies us. So we are constantly looking at ourselves. Am I doing anything that's going to make me feel fear, guilt, or shame? Because those feel terrible. Not safe, mommy won't love me, she'll abandon me, and I'll die. That's the progression that our minds go through. The kid may not be aware of that progression, but that's happening deep down programmed on an instinctual basis. So the way we train our kids today, and it's very rare to see a person that is not basically trying to avoid fear, armoring against fear, preventing anything that might make us afraid, and trying to avoid feelings of guilt and of shame, which make us feel very, very bad.
And so because of that, was that the core cause of unhappiness and unrest, the state that you were
I think
discussing?
this has a lot to do with why it is so difficult for us as adults to spend most of our time in relaxed enjoyment. There's another part of it, though, and that is if we were lucky enough to have parents that were consistently warm for us, a smile when they see us, a feeling of, you're welcome to be with me. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're my little girl, my little boy, so that you feel warmth coming from the parent, loving warmth. And then if the parent is available for me to meet my needs, because little kids are pretty helpless at age 2, 3, 4. There's not much they can do to meet many of their needs. And so when mama or daddy or a caretaker, preferably mama, at least traditionally in the past, when they're not there for me, I feel abandoned. And abandonment equals death on a deep instinctual level. You see, our brains were put together about 200-300 million years ago in order to survive in the jungle. That is most of our brain. The cerebral cortex that we think with, that wonderful biocomputer upstairs, that is an evolution of the last the last 40,000 years. That's the new brain. But the old brain that we are making it with so much of our life, that is, we depend upon it to guide us, it is programmed for jungle conditions. And in a jungle, animals better be paranoid or they'll be someone's supper. So what's needed for animals is not needed for us. And yet we have basically animal brains inside of us, with the human addition of that wonderful cortex with its 10 billion cells that makes us able to think.
For a number of years, you've been teaching the concept of the importance of becoming one with the law of higher consciousness, as you call it, which is unconditional love.
Love everyone unconditionally, including yourself. Loving other people really has to begin with yourself, because if there's a way you're not loving yourself, you will hide it. Your ego hides it from you, and you project it on other people and accuse them when they're totally innocent, but you have the feeling that they're guilty. It's an unfortunate mechanism that we do automatically until we learn what we're doing, and then we get to be more aware, more conscious.
So, what is unconditional love?
Unconditional love means that I love you no matter what you think, say, and do. Now, what might come up for you immediately is, well, suppose I hit you, or suppose I take some money out of your pocket, or suppose I go out and murder somebody. Can you love a murderer? Is that what unconditional love means? I mean, what happened to right and wrong? What happened to helping people shape up to fit into society? A lot of people think unconditional love is impossible. But the problem is they don't understand what it is you love. You love the human being who basically is like you. In other words, we are born, or at least when the sperm hits the egg cell, and join and begin to grow inside the mother's belly, we literally have everything we need to live a whole, complete, beautiful life and unfold as we should. This might sound rather controversial in a way, but think of a dog. Do you think that a dog isn't born with everything it needs to go through the stages of young doghood and evolve into a beautiful dog? It doesn't need to go to dog school in order to learn how to be a mature, fine, loving dog. It does that naturally. And so we are, in our essence, such beautiful beings. Sometimes our egos say, I gotta hide because I don't want him to know the truth about me. See, if you really knew the truth about me, you'd know that I was born such and designed to be such a beautiful, wonderful, loving, cooperative, peaceful, and happy human being. And then came abuse. Now, you can take a dog and abuse it, as I pointed out, and it will lose this ability to love. But we're born loving and bonding rapidly to the caretakers around us. We just naturally love, not something that we have to be taught. But if we are abused, and I know most parents, they don't abuse their kids deliberately. They're just living out their programming. And even when they're violent to the children, they think, well, I'm doing it for their own good. You know how that works. So you can see how we're born so beautiful. And when you do something that doesn't fit my models, and let's say it's something immoral, illegal, or aggressive toward me, what I need to do in order to love you is to realize that in all your essentials, you are like me, but you've been damaged, and due to various childhood incidents with parents that really didn't understand the skills that are needed to help to stay out of the way of the natural development of a child. And when that happens, you are not you. You're a false self. And with healing, you can become whole again. So I can, if I wish, reject what you do, but I will not reject you because you're just like me. We're all part of a wonderful human partnership. We're really all relatives in the human family. No matter what our skin color or what country we live in, we're all either near or distant relatives. We have such power with this cerebral cortex to do things that are out of the paradigm of the Newtonian Cartesian science. We can do things that science has no ability to explain so far, because they're trying to do it from a point of view that the clockwork universe sort of thing. What's happening now sets up what happens next. It's all a matter of levers and mechanical stuff. And there's something gloriously non-mechanical about consciousness when we let our minds extend out, joining with others. It's not something we have to think about doing, but when we're loving, we do this increasingly and naturally. We have tremendous powers.
You teach the living love system.
Yes.
And about this idea that people operate out of different centers.
Yes.
Could you go into some detail on that?
Sure. These are natural scannings of the mind, natural frameworks that we put labels on to understand them better. It happens with animals. Let's say there's a loud noise, and here's a dog in relaxed enjoyment, but it hears a loud noise, like a firecracker go off maybe 20 feet away. It's going to immediately make a scanning for security. Get up, go look around, see what's happening, you see. So our first scanning is for security, and that's pretty important, because if we're going to survive and not get killed and leave offspring, then we'd better keep a certain level of security and responsiveness to conditions that feel unsafe to us. And the second level is sensation. Let's say the animal stays safe, but it needs to go for certain sensations from an evolutionary point of view. Food and sex being two of the big ones. And because if they don't go for the sensations of enjoying food, they will not nourish themselves and won't be able to continue living. Also sex. There needs to be a certain amount of reproduction in order for the race to continue. And of course there's many other ways. Sometimes I remember driving down a country road, the trees were arching over the road, and there was a little place where sunlight came in, about a 6-foot area, and a snake was in the middle of it. And when the snake saw us coming up in the car, it skedaddled along out of the way. So that undoubtedly was a pleasure on a coolish day to bask in the sun. We have many other ways of getting pleasure: massage, listening to music, watching a sunset, holding the hands of our beloved, and so forth. So that sensation center is a very important center to have fulfilled. However, it can get off kilter, as we know, because a life devoted only to sensations will be lacking in a certain wholeness that won't let it feel fulfilled. Then the third center is the power center. This the emotions that go with the power center are anger and hate, and they're simply a way of keeping you out of my turf. In other words, this is my room, and when you're in my room, this is not acceptable. It's good old territorialness of animals. This is my girlfriend. You don't put your arm around her. Or this is my money, and I'll decide how I spend my money, that sort of thing. This is all very ego-based. These lower three centers with the fears generated by security scanning, and the grief when we don't get the sensations we want, and the frustration, and also the feeling of that our territory is being taken over, and that calls for the power, you see. Now, we can then go into a very beautiful leap into what we call the higher centers. Now, here's where the fun starts, because obviously feeling secure is not going to help you enjoy your life. It's a basic condition you need to take care of in order to feel free to enjoy. And also you feel very alienated when you look at people as people that can hurt you and threaten you. It's the ego misleading you into feeling that they are dangerous, and life is a fight of me versus them. So we learn how, in the Living Love way, to deal with security, sensation, and power, how we can try to make ourselves too secure, and our life won't be balanced and enjoyable, or too many sensations become cloying after a while, and too much power can tempt us into lots of trouble, because we try to solve things that we want solved by pushing or hurting or stealing or killing another person. The next quantum leap is into the love center. And love is this feeling of non-separateness between my heart and your heart. Love is not sex, in spite of the fact that we confuse the issue by talking of making love. That's an entirely different behavior. But love is just this feeling of we're so alike, and that I don't have to protect myself from you. And there's no barriers between us in feelings. And this, of course, is a very beautiful experience to create. And as we grow, we learn to, as human beings, we can be creating this experience more and more to get up toward the high 90s, 90% in feeling this unconditional love for other people. And it starts with unconditional love for ourselves. That is so important, because if we are rejecting ourselves, we will not be able to love another person. There's going to be sand in the gears there.
So I assume most people are operating out of those first three centers.
Most of the time, yes.
This whole notion of living love, why is it so difficult for people to do? I can understand it rationally, but on an emotional level or on a practical basis of actually living it, why is it so difficult?
I think the problem is we really don't understand what our mind is doing. Ego is in control of it. Ego creating a separate self. I have to keep myself defended, and you're likely to attack me. And in that mode, I just get caught in an illusion of deep separateness and fear. And to understand what's happening, I find it very helpful to say, am I running an addictive demand, or is it a preference? An addiction is an emotion-backed demand, and we use that term very broadly. For example, that not only applies to things like cigarettes or coffee, but it also applies, let's say, if I don't like the tie that you might be wearing, and I say, that's a lousy tie. That my tone implies that I have an addiction that you not wear that tie, or that I feel ashamed to be with somebody who has such poor taste as to wear a tie with this color rather than that color. Most of us are addicted to people not criticizing us. We're addicted to wanting what we want when we want it. This is all the operation of ego, which creates the separate self, which keeps us in torment, literally in hell, the experience of hell on earth. And we contrast that with the love-based way of creating preferences. In other words, the spirit of love can help us up-level addictions, these demands that we have to be happy. That's an illusion. I really shouldn't have my happiness dependent on anyone's color of tie, for example. But when I'm working from a preference, which the spirit of love can help me develop, then I prefer that ties not be that way, that they be more this way. But it's not a demand, it's not an addiction of mine. I can be comfortable either way. I can still stay in relaxed enjoyment, whichever way you'd dress.
Is there any good addictions or addictive demands, such as an addiction to knowledge or an addiction to spiritual growth?
Well, I think it's better to be addicted to knowledge than addicted to getting revenge on your neighbor because of something that happened in the past. But the problem with good addictions is it's still an addiction. It destroys the inner peace. It destroys relaxed enjoyment, because an addictive demand focuses the mind, body, and spirit of the human being on getting a specific thing, and their happiness will depend on whether they get it or not. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an addiction, by definition, you see. And when you look at, suppose I'm addicted to getting a PhD degree, or suppose I prefer to get a PhD degree. Well, I can still put out the energy from a preference. I can still make it okay for me to get it or not to get it. I don't have sleepless nights worrying, am I going to pass my orals and so forth. I just do what I do, and it's not such a heavy goal that is so desperate, you see. I mean, many people who are working on PhDs, they get nervous breakdowns.
Because someone might say,
Ulcers.
well, I might be addicted to success because I work hard, but I like it. I enjoy my job, I enjoy my business, and I have a lot of things I've acquired because of the fruits of my labor, because of my successes. Is that an addiction?
Well, an addiction would be an emotion-backed demand. If I'm demanding that I be successful, what it might mean is that for me to have respect for myself, that I've got to achieve, be president or make money by the handful or whatever, you see. And if I don't succeed, I then tell myself I'm a failure and I can't enjoy my life. But why couldn't I let it be a preference? Then I lightly go through life. I can be relaxed, I can enjoy it, I can do what I'm able to do, and it's usually not my addiction that makes me successful. It's that I've got a good idea or I'm able to fit into some company's program and they need me, I need them, and I can just make it a preference so that I'll have more relaxed enjoyment, I'll balance my life more. Many people addicted to success, they pay a huge price, and they're not aware of it. They say, well, I like that. But they won't have time for their families. They won't balance their life with play enough. And when they play, it'll be frantic in order to win at tennis. But there's no reason that we have to drive ourselves so much. And it creates a lighter, gentler, more loving experience of life when we are motivated by preferences. And as a human being, we can, just because of the love of ourselves and other people, we can put out energy needed to make money or whatever it is that we want. It's a difference of a driving the addiction is like putting a gun to one's head, and it forces me, it pushes me, it makes me do something, and it produces a frantic, ego-based life.
Is there some litmus test that they can give themselves to know definitively this is an addictive demand that I'm creating?
Yeah. I guess one way would be to say, if I'm addicted to what's called success, whatever that means, I could just say to myself, suppose I don't get promoted to president. Suppose by the time I'm 40, I don't have the 10 million in my bank account like the book said I should get, or whatever. And I just look at it, and am I likely to say to myself, that's okay. You're doing well. You're a beautiful being. It won't affect your self-esteem. It really doesn't affect your life because you're not your act, you're not your performance, you're not your programming. You're just this beautiful human being. And that would be what it's like as a preference. But if I came up to say, oh gosh, it would be awful. I couldn't respect myself. No one would like me. I'd just be ashamed and feel guilty and be afraid to get to age 40 if I don't have whatever it is that I put my heart on to be successful at.
So a goal or a goal-driven demand can become addictive if we're emotionally
Anything
linked to
can
that.
become addictive, right? If we think we absolutely have to have it to be happy. And that could be absolutely anything in this world.
So it's a perceptual thing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It's a motivational space. It's like you can become addicted to being let's say, a minister or a priest or a rabbi, a wonderful addiction that'll lead you to help a lot of people. But why not be preferring it and enjoy your life rather than create it as an addictive demand?
I see. So let me give you a scenario.
Yeah.
I'll do a simple one. Let's say I'm addicted to the fact, or I've determined that I'm addicted to the fact that my spouse is always late.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least my perception is she's always late.
You feel an addictive demand that she be on time.
Right, and I'm upset and I get angry and I anticipate the fact that she's going to be late and I
Yeah.
know she's going to be late and this is an upsetting kind of thing. I recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
but she's still late.
Yeah.
She's still late. So
Right.
how do I deal with that? Because her behavior hasn't changed, even though I would prefer her to not be late all the time. She's still late.
Yeah. Well, what one might do, first you've got to identify that you are running an addictive demand. In other words, you can't get out of jail unless you know you're in jail. So first you look at, I am addictively demanding that she be on time. And I lecture her, I get her to promise to be on time, and I have a lot of righteous indignation when she, quote, lets me down again. And it becomes a very touchy issue between us. And I'm looking at that and saying, there must be a better way. Now, what would I do with the spirit of love guiding me to make it a preference so that I prefer she be on time, but I'm not demanding it? And so one might just want a change in perception based on love. And that means that whether she is on time or not, I'm glad to see her, I love her, and it doesn't become an issue between us. And so I just figure out a way to, what would I do if it was a preference? Well, knowing she's sometimes late, I'll just keep a pocketbook in my coat and pull that out and read a few pages. She'll be here very fast. And, or I can say, if she can't be here just from the loving energy between us, knowing that I am a person who was trained to be punctual and I'm hung up in that way, if she can't release the energy to do it from a love space, I don't want to get it any other way, because that will really chip away at the love between us, which is much more important than being on time, really.
And is that something then that needs to be really consciously dealt with?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
So if I prefer her to be on time and she's not, I can't perhaps modify her behavior, but I can certainly modify my reaction to her behavior.
Each of us, it's so wonderful, each of us has a power to change ourselves if we see with any perspective what we've been doing to throw ourselves out of a enjoyment in life, an inner peace and relaxation and fun.
When people start doing this, and people that you've worked with, probably many people, and people who've read your works, do they start transforming inside? Does something start happening when they start seeing this occur in their lives, and they can recognize these addictive demands and start eliminating them from their lives?
Yes, I've had many people that I didn't know write me and say, this book helped me save my marriage, or your book, Handbook to Higher Consciousness, it made all the difference in my life. It keeps you from being so driven and pushed and so demanding to a gentler, more loving person. It's the only way to be gentle with yourself and not have high blood pressure and heart trouble and really put a stress on your body that slows you down. It doesn't enable you to have a full life.
Do the people that finally do understand and use these processes, do you forget? When you're in the heat of, let's say, an argument, or you're in, suddenly those addictive demands start surfacing, do you kind of forget how to apply that?
We're all
idea?
human, and I find that, for example, I can have it reprogrammed to up-level an addiction to a preference at a certain level of stimulus. And as long as life is, the situation stays at that level or below, I have my skill down really well. But then sometimes things happen at a higher level of stimulus. More is involved. And it's very easy to trip. But when you have developed this and you've noticed the difference between the relaxed enjoyment of life and the driven gun to your head, rushing, fighting the world experience, you long to get back to the simplicity of just loving yourself and loving others. And somehow we're all connected psychically. There's a lot of experiments that have been done to show that sometimes people can literally read each other's mind and communicate messages over 1,000 miles away. Most of us don't have that talent, but surprisingly, how many people do. And when this happens, it's like we activate a collective brotherhood, sisterhood of humans all over in our environment, so that you feel somehow you're not isolated as you are when running an addiction. You feel more tuned in to the cosmic partnership of us all. And that puts you in a different vibrational space. And out of that comes remarkable things, miracles, things you just wouldn't expect to be happening.
So because you've shifted your perspective and
Yeah.
addressed life in a more loving, giving way,
Yeah,
you receive more,
yeah,
and it opens you up to other possibilities.
yeah.
And so I assume this becomes self-reinforcing.
It can be very powerfully. And finally you get to where you just don't want to go back to the style that almost everyone in the world is using, 99% maybe, but that percentage of people that are working from a love base, a love motivation, rather than a separate self, me versus you. I want to get what I want, and I don't care whether it takes something that you got or not, and this feeling of a limited pie where I've got to grab mine first. It just is such a difference in relaxation. And when we get relaxed, it shows in our face. It just, it's the way life ought to be.
In your book, Handbook to Higher Consciousness, you talk about the ultimate level or the final place that you would grow or evolve to, which is cosmic consciousness. What's that all about? What does that mean?
Well, I can't say that I create my experience of life through cosmic consciousness. That's another word for that would be enlightenment. And I'm still quite in the human phase, so I can tell you information about it, but not work from my personal experience. I can stay pretty consistently in the love center and in what we call the cornucopia center, feeling of abundance. Life gives me more than I need to be happy. I don't have to claw and scratch for enough. I've got enough of everything. And those are very comfortable places to be. Sometimes I get thrown off, but I'll know I'm off and I can quickly shake off the dust and get up again. So as this state that we can all create, and it's just a matter of knowing how you do it and doing the practice. See, knowing it doesn't help. You've got to develop the skill to do it with. And that is going from an ego-based, separate self, ridden with the fear of fear and the feeling of guilt and shame, to a love-based, unified self. And this unified self gives you a community of consciousness with your brothers and sisters. We're all relatives. All of us human beings on this planet are relatives. And we're psychically in tune with each other in remarkable ways. And so instead of me fighting the world, which my ego and separate self would have me do, me against the world, it's like me with the world, harmonizing with the world. It simply means that if I smile, walking down the street, passing someone, if I smile to them and just look at what a beautiful person they are, because everyone has inner beauty if you are looking for it, they smile back. There's a little community set up. You may never speak to them again, but oftentimes I've had a person say, I passed you on the street and you smiled at me. You didn't know me, but you just smiled. That felt so good. And somehow it's like you are not alone any longer. You're supported by other people. You're cared for. You're loved by other people. And this is the experience that we can create. And of course, we use the words like enlightenment or sainthood, perhaps, or samadhi. These are terms that would refer to people that have evolved and do it on a very ongoing, consistent basis of experiencing being in a friendly, loving world. Mayor Baba called it the new humanity that we can all create together. And sometimes as I look at the world, I'm saying, well, I know pendulums have to go both ways, and sooner or later they get to the middle, but I wish the pendulum would quit going that way and turn around pretty soon, because we seem to so much need in our society today to parent our children in a way that they're not as injured and they do not feel as separate from other relatives, all of the other humans on the planet. They just feel a oneness and a closeness, and things that the ego often makes very important, such as skin color, educational background, quality of automobile, the type of home you live in and the neighborhood and so forth. These to ego are very, very important. And of course, no matter how phony it is and how broke I get doing it, I've got to keep up that phony front to feel enough self-esteem and to get the approval of neighbors. Well, that's the separate self doing it to you. Whereas the unified self, you will never get as much approval from neighbors as when you just go over and say hello. I notice you're watering your grass, and we haven't had a chance to talk yet. I'd like to just get to know you. And you reach out in friendship with loving energy, and all of a sudden your neighbor and you begin to have this miracle of togetherness.
And what is the purpose of human life?
I think the purpose of life is to fall in love and stay in love with yourself, all other human beings, in the absolutely sure knowledge that life works through love. It does not work through power, separateness, and a separate self feeling of me against the world.
And you experience that by being fully in the now, by
Love
living.
is always now.
Now. It's not about thinking about the future or the past
Yeah.
and dredging up the past, but living fully right now.
To the extent that you might have injured me in the past, it's very important that I forgive. I use selective memory in order to forgive whatever you did or said. However it hurt me, no matter how right I was. See, I can choose to be right and righteous, or I can choose to be happy. And those of us that choose to be right and righteous, we are right and righteous. And we can probably find friends who agree with us that that was terrible what he did. But really, it doesn't give me inner peace. It doesn't give me the relaxed enjoyment of my life. It creates stress and psychosomatic disease and alienation, and creates a war between us on one level or another, subtle or gross. So when we learn that all we have to do is open our hearts to ask the Spirit of Love to show us the way, to respond, to have a new perception, a shift in perception of how to respond with love, and we will forgive for our own sake whatever injustices or wrongs happened in the past. You see, by carrying it and trying to get revenge, I simply keep myself in a war with you. So we have the choice. We can create the experience of our life and flow our energy out as guided by the spirit of love to create a unified higher self that's all within us. The seeds are there. It's just that they haven't been watered properly. And we call it abuse during childhood that made us alter who we really are and try to save ourselves from pain and survive childhood. And this is a choice between being love-based or fear-based. And when we create our lives through the energy of the ego, which helps us develop fear and guilt and shame, we create a separate self. That's always an illusion, because it's not who we really are. We, deep down in, know that this isn't the way life should be, that the people in Yugoslavia shouldn't be killing each other, and that there's another way to create life. And what we have to do is just learn to work on ourselves. And as we begin to do that, we put loving energy in the world, and we're all connected on a psychic level, so that if we heal ourselves, we will help heal other people, even if we never see them. It somehow goes out in, like you throw a pebble in a pond, and concentric ripples will go out for 100 feet, you see. And so by healing yourself, you can enjoy a life characterized by relaxed enjoyment and inner peace, fun, joy, all the good stuff in life. And you can gradually drop off from that illusion that the world is your enemy. There's wounded people out there, and as you know, a wounded person or a wounded animal, they can be threatening. But you learn how to sidestep, how to duck. You don't have to feel separate. You can feel compassion at the wounds that they have, the illusion they live under. And so by working to get rid of your ego-based perception that I'm separate from the world, it's me versus the world. Instead, I'm one with the world. These are my human family. Everybody, all 5 billion of us on Earth, they're part of our human family. They're relatives, everybody. It doesn't matter what skin color. We're all genetically distant or far cousins of each other. And so as we begin to create this experience of love, forgiving, not carrying stuff, we can create a paradise, literally a heaven here on Earth. And this will help transform